The Khazar Dominion had seen many strange things during its centuries of conquest, but nothing quite like this. The planet Omega-12 was a barren rock, uninhabited for millennia, and long forgotten by most of the galaxy. It was the kind of world no one bothered to explore anymore. But when a deep space survey team stumbled upon the artifact, something felt different. The object, hidden beneath an ancient ruined city, seemed to hum with a subtle energy that was impossible to ignore. At the Dominion's sprawling capital, Khazar officials debated its significance with growing concern. The artifact, a smooth, spherical object about the size of a human's torso, was covered in a script none of their scholars recognized. As Khazar historian Lyra Trask stood in the command chamber, studying the glowing orb through a reinforced glass panel, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just an ordinary relic. Her sharp eyes narrowed as the translators worked feverishly to decode the alien symbols. The language is old. One of the lead technicians, Raxos, said, his voice heavy with disbelief. Older than anything we've seen before. It's human. Lyra's brow furrowed. Human? Are you sure? He nodded, eyes wide. The script is definitely human, or at least it matches the same patterns seen in the earliest Earth texts. But this is not right. This doesn't belong to their time. It's centuries older. A murmur rippled through the room. The Khazar Dominion, for all its might, had always regarded humanity as little more than an ancient, irrelevant species, vanishing from the galaxy's stage long before the rise of the Dominion. Earth, once the cradle of humanity's great empire, was now a distant memory, an irrelevant relic of a long-dead race. But the more the artifact was studied, the clearer it became that the message wasn't just some old language. It was a warning. The script appeared fragmented, but some words stood out. The elders return. When stars align, they are among you now. Lyra's hands shook as she turned the words over in her mind. The elders? The last time anyone had heard that term, it had referred to humans, but they had vanished from the galaxy eons ago, gone without a trace. The more she thought about it, the more the implications gnawed at her. If humanity had truly been the elders, then their disappearance had been far more calculated than anyone had realized. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. General Varrock, the Khazar military leader, strode into the room. His cold gaze swept over the artifact with the kind of skepticism that only a conqueror could have. What have you found, historian? Lyra hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But one thing was certain. Her findings were leading her to a conclusion that could shake the foundations of the entire galaxy. And if she was right, the Khazar Dominion, and all the other powers, would regret dismissing humanity's past. We may be on the brink of discovering something far more dangerous than we thought, she said quietly. Something ancient, and very powerful. This scene sets the tone for a larger mystery, and the stakes that will unfold in the rest of the story, with Lyra Trask beginning to uncover something that no one, not even the powerful Khazar, could have predicted. Lyra Trask sat alone in her study deep within the Khazar Dominion archives, the dim light of a holoscreen casting long shadows across the room. The artifacts she'd uncovered from Omega-12 were now stacked in front of her. Data fragments, ancient texts, and scraps of alien technology. Each piece told a story, but they all led to the same conclusion. Humanity wasn't just some forgotten species. They were the elders of the galaxy, and they had ruled the stars for millennia before disappearing. But why? And more importantly, why had the Dominion buried the truth? Lyra's fingers danced across the display, tracing over the cryptic symbols she had translated earlier. She had spent weeks poring over the fragments, cross-referencing every scrap of data, but it was the words that kept haunting her. The elders will return when the stars align. They are among you now. What did it mean? She couldn't shake the feeling that the Dominion's government wasn't telling the whole truth. Her own people, the Khazar, had always claimed to be the galaxy's dominant force. But what if humanity's disappearance hadn't been some random collapse of an ancient empire? What if it had been something far more deliberate? Our thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of Raxos, the Liege translator who had been working with her on the artifact. His normally confident demeanour was gone, replaced by something more urgent. His brow was furrowed in a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Lyra, you need to see this." He handed her a data chip, and her stomach tightened as she inserted it into her console. The screen flickered to life, revealing an encrypted message buried within the artifact's data core. It was a personal log, recorded in a language she knew all too well, an old Earth dialect. The timestamp was staggering, over 1,000 years old. It was the voice of a human. To those who find this, the voice began, gravelly and full of static, "I have activated the archive because the time has come. The galaxy is on the brink, and we cannot allow the mistakes of the past to repeat. We are the elders, humanity. We watched over the galaxy, guided the stars, and kept the darkness at bay. But there is a force beyond our understanding, that will destroy all of us. We have sealed ourselves away to protect the future. You, the heirs, must decide. Do you awaken us, or let the galaxy fall to its fate?" Lyra's pulse quickened. The message was clear. Humanity had known something terrible was coming, something that had forced them into hiding. They hadn't vanished by accident. They had gone into hiding, perhaps to shield the galaxy from a catastrophe they couldn't stop. She quickly accessed the rest of the log, her heart racing as she read on. The key lies within the stars themselves. When the stars align, the elders will return, but they will not come alone. They will bring with them the final reckoning. Lyra felt a cold chill run down her spine. This wasn't just some ancient myth or rumour. It was a warning. And the Dominion, no, the entire galaxy, had ignored humanity's legacy for far too long. Someone had to know the truth. Someone had to stop this. But telling them? That was a different matter entirely. She turned toward the door, her mind racing. If the Khazar were to learn the full scope of this, it would change everything. There were forces within the Dominion, powerful, dangerous factions, that would never allow the return of humanity. And she had just discovered the first piece of their long-lost puzzle. Captain Ethan Hayes stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out into the dark expanse of space. Beyond the thick glass walls of New Horizons' central command station, the stars shimmered like distant fires in the void. The colony was isolated, far from the bustling trade routes of the Khazar Dominion. For all its technological advancement, New Horizon had always felt like an afterthought, cut off from the galaxy's centre, and to many forgotten. It was a place where humanity could rebuild, far from the wars of the past. But things were changing. A strange signal had been coming from deep beneath the surface of New Horizon, from a hidden facility no one had known existed. At first, it was faint, almost like static, but then the signal began to grow stronger. As the days passed, it started to transmit in patterns, an encrypted frequency that no one could decipher. The engineers, once dismissive of it as an old relic or malfunction, now regarded it with growing unease. The signal wasn't random. Someone or something was trying to communicate. Ethan's fingers drummed nervously on the metal railing as he glanced over at Lieutenant Mara Jennings, the colony's top intelligence officer, who had just entered the command station. Her face was drawn, her expression grim. "Captain," she said, holding up a data pad. "I think we found something." Ethan turned toward her, his curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Mara tapped a few commands, and the screen flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the colony's subterranean complex. A cluster of interconnected tunnels stretched for miles beneath the surface, far more than the initial survey had suggested. The signal had led them here. But this wasn't just any old research facility. This was something older, something advanced. "The facility is unlike anything we've ever seen," Mara continued. "It's far more technologically sophisticated than anything we've recovered from human archives. And this," she highlighted a particular area on the map. "This section is sealed off. There's no record of what's inside." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had heard stories, rumors, of strange artifacts, alien tech left behind by humanity's ancient civilization. But he had never believed them. After all, Earth was long gone, humanity scattered across the stars, fragmented into small colonies with only a fraction of their former power. Still, something about the way the data had been relayed to him didn't sit right. The hidden facility could hold the key to humanity's forgotten history, but it could also be far more dangerous. "Send a team," Ethan said, his voice low. "If it's as old as it looks, there could be answers down there, answers that could change everything." As Mara prepared to relay the orders, a soft beep interrupted them. It was a transmission, a burst of encrypted data coming from the very facility they were about to investigate. Ethan glanced at the screen. "We're not the only ones interested in this place." Mara's expression hardened. "That's impossible. No one should be able to detect us." Ethan didn't respond, his mind already racing. Someone had found them. Someone who knew what was buried beneath the surface. And it wasn't the Khazar Dominion. "Get that team down there now," he said, his voice steady despite the cold certainty creeping into his chest. "We're not the only ones who are looking for answers. And we won't be the only ones to dig out the past." Lyra's heart raced as she stood aboard the Khazar transport ship, staring out through the viewports at the swirling nebula beyond. She had never imagined that her search for answers would lead her here, to a colony on the edge of human space. New Horizon had long been considered an insignificant backwater, a place where humanity's remnants had settled, far from the prying eyes of galactic powers. Yet now it felt like the very epicenter of something far greater than anyone had realized. As the ship descended toward the surface, Lyra couldn't shake the gnawing sense of urgency that had settled over her. The information she had uncovered about humanity's true role in the galaxy was far more troubling than she had anticipated. Humanity had once been the galaxy's caretakers, the elders who held the power to guide the stars. But that power hadn't just been a gift, it had been a responsibility to keep something dark at bay. And now it seemed that darkness was returning. The transport settled on the landing pad, and Lyra was quickly escorted by military personnel through the bustling streets of New Horizon's capital city. Though the colony had been isolated for centuries, there was a quiet vibrancy here, a sense of purpose beneath the surface. She had heard the rumors of human resilience, how, even in their scattered and diminished state, humanity had continued to thrive. But there was something else here, something unspoken, as if the city itself held a secret. Her escort brought her to the Central Command Center, a modern facility built into the side of a mountain. Captain Ethan Hayes was waiting for her inside, standing with his arms folded across his chest, his expression unreadable. His sharp eyes scanned her as she entered, but he said nothing at first. "Lyra Trask," he said finally, his voice steady but tinged with suspicion. What brings a Khazar historian all the way out here? I don't think this is just about ancient artifacts. Lyra met his gaze, feeling the weight of the knowledge she carried. I know what you're sitting on here, Captain. I know what's buried beneath New Horizon, and I know why the Khazar are so interested in your colony. Ethan's face hardened, his expression a mixture of disbelief and concern. What are you talking about? She hesitated for a moment, glancing around the room as if checking for eavesdroppers. The artifact you found, the signal you've been receiving, it's more than just a relic. It's a warning, a message from humanity's past. You are not the only ones who are awakening. Ethan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? You're telling me this signal is coming from a human source? Lyra nodded slowly, the gravity of her words hanging in the air. Humanity's disappearance from the galaxy wasn't by accident. We didn't just vanish, we left. We sealed ourselves away to prevent the galaxy from being consumed by an ancient force. And now that force is stirring again. The room fell silent as Ethan absorbed her words. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of history pressing down on them both. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice low and grim. So, you're telling me that we are the only ones who can stop this? Lyra's eyes locked with his. Yes, but only if we act before it's too late. The tension on New Horizon had escalated in the hours following Lyra's meeting with Captain Ethan Hayes. She could feel the weight of history bearing down on them both. The revelations she had uncovered about humanity's role as the galaxy's elders and the ancient force threatening the universe had sent ripples through the colony. Ethan had been hesitant, but the more they discussed, the clearer it became. Humanity had to act. The question was, could they still wield the power to protect the galaxy? Could they rise to the challenge? But the Khazar weren't about to let this new threat slip through their fingers. The transport ships arrived at dawn, slicing through the atmosphere with military precision. Khazar warships, sleek and massive, hovered ominously in the sky, their dark hulls reflecting the pale light of the planet's twin moons. The Dominion had sent a full strike force, led by General Varrock himself, to secure New Horizon and seize whatever secrets Lyra had uncovered. They wouldn't wait for any more answers. The galaxy was theirs to control, and they had no intention of sharing it. Lyra watched from a high observation deck as the Khazar soldiers began deploying onto the planet's surface. Her stomach twisted in knots, knowing that this wasn't just about knowledge anymore. This was about survival. The Khazar weren't here for answers. They were here to suppress the truth, and if it came to a fight, they wouldn't hesitate. We need to act quickly, she told Ethan, standing beside him as he surveyed the incoming invasion force. The artifact, the technology beneath the surface, it's more than just a weapon. It's a signal, a beacon. And if they get their hands on it, they'll trigger something far worse than they realize. Ethan clenched his jaw. I know. We've got to hold them off long enough to get to the facility. You said the Khazar won't understand the power they're messing with. They'll try to control it. And they'll fail, Lyra replied. But we don't have much time. The alignment of the stars is coming. We need to activate the system before the Khazar can stop us. Before they could continue, a comm alert chimed, and Lieutenant Mara Jennings appeared on the holo screen, her face tense. Captain, we've got a problem. The Khazar have landed in force. They're already making their way to the central research facility. If we don't move now, they'll secure the entire sector. Ethan's gaze hardened. Prepare the team. We're moving out. Lyra watched as Ethan turned to organize his troops. She felt a pang of uncertainty. The battle ahead would be brutal. There was no way around it. The Khazar were far more advanced militarily, and even with humanity's forgotten technology, the odds were slim. But what the Khazar didn't know was that the very technology they sought could be humanity's last chance at saving the galaxy. Lyra and Ethan were walking a razor's edge, but they had no choice but to fight. As the first shots rang out across the colony's outer perimeter, Lyra's thoughts raced. The galaxy was on the brink of a war it didn't even understand. And if they didn't unlock the secrets beneath New Horizon first, it might be the last war the galaxy ever fought. The battle for New Horizon had erupted with brutal force. The Khazar soldiers, trained for war and equipped with the latest in Dominion weaponry, swept across the colony's outer defense perimeter like a wave crashing against the shore. The human forces, though determined, were outmatched in nearly every way. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in their knowledge of the terrain, and in a desperate hope that the ancient technologies buried beneath their feet held the key to turning the tide. Captain Ethan Hayes led his team through the chaos, his mind focused solely on one thing, the facility deep beneath the surface. They had to get there before the Khazar did, and before it was too late. He could feel the weight of Lyra's words pressing down on him. We can stop it. We have to unlock the technology before they do, or everything will be lost. But what exactly was it? Lyra had explained in fragments, but her descriptions were vague. The force that humanity once fought, she had said, her voice edged with urgency. Ethan didn't understand all the details, but he knew one thing. They were dealing with something far more ancient and far more dangerous than the Khazar could ever imagine. They reached the entrance to the hidden facility, an enormous underground complex, its doors sealed tight by centuries of neglect. Lyra, her face pale from the strain of their fight, keyed in the access code she had uncovered for the artifact's data core. The massive doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber filled with sleek, unfamiliar technology. The air inside was cool and heavy with the weight of ages past. It felt like stepping into the heart of a forgotten world. "This is it," Lyra whispered, "the center of humanity's legacy." They moved deeper into the facility, passing rows of dormant machines, their surfaces etched with symbols that were both familiar and alien. In the center of the main chamber stood a massive console, its interface glowing faintly. Lyra approached it, fingers trembling as she activated the system. The room hummed to life, and ancient data streams began to flood the walls, showing images of long-lost galaxies, star maps, and, most shockingly, an image of a massive, incomprehensible structure. A network of black holes, arranged in a symmetrical formation, each one connected by beams of energy. Ethan's heart sank as he read the accompanying text. The Rift, a doorway to the end of all things. "The Rift," Lyra murmured, her voice almost a whisper. "It's the reason humanity left. We discovered it long ago. A force beyond comprehension, a dark presence that exists outside the known universe. It's coming back." Ethan's mind raced as he tried to comprehend the enormity of what Lyra was saying. The rift was not just a natural phenomenon. It was a weapon. Or, worse, a key, a gateway to something that could devour the galaxy. It was the force humanity had hidden away, sealed off and forgotten until now. As the data continued to scroll, Lyra activated another command, and the central console flashed to life. A final message appeared, this one directly from the human archives. A voice, gravelly, weathered by time, spoke. "To those who find this, know that the time has come to awaken us. The galaxy's fate rests in your hands. But beware, for the darkness we sealed away is waking. We are the elders. We have done our part. Now you must choose." Ethan turned to Lyra, eyes wide. "We have to stop it. Right now." But Lyra's face was grim. It's too late for that. The alignment has already begun. The rift is opening. A sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them, followed by a low, ominous hum that resonated deep in the bones. The door they had entered through slammed shut, and the sound of distant explosions echoed through the chamber. "We need to move," Lyra said, urgency in her voice. "The Khazar will be here any minute, and when they find out what we've unlocked." Ethan nodded. There was no more time for explanations. The rift was opening, and humanity's legacy had been unleashed. Now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences. The tremors beneath New Horizon grew more intense, and the low hum resonated through the facility like the growl of some slumbering beast awakening. Lyra's eyes were fixed on the flickering data screen, her breath shallow as the ancient text scrolled by. The rift, the gateway to unimaginable destruction, was no longer a myth. It was real, and it was opening. "We're running out of time," Lyra said, her voice strained. "The Khazar will be here any minute, and we haven't even begun to decipher how to close it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we fight. We make sure they don't get any closer to that doorway." But Lyra shook her head. "The rift isn't something that can be sealed by force. It's tied to the stars themselves, the alignment that humanity spoke of. Once it's fully opened, there's no turning back." Ethan's gaze hardened. "Then we stop it before they know what it is. We're not going to let them use this as a weapon." Before Lyra could respond, the sound of boots clanking against metal echoed down the corridor. The Khazar were close. Too close. Ethan raised his weapon and gestured for Lyra to follow him as they moved deeper into the facility. The walls seemed to pulse in time with the growing tremors, as if the very structure of the building was alive with energy. They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the facility, where a series of colossal, interlocking machines hummed with power. The rift itself was now visible in the center, an enormous swirling void of darkness, flickering with violent energy. From this nexus, tendrils of black light stretched outward, reaching toward the stars, as if feeding off the energy of the galaxy itself. The air around them seemed to crackle with raw power, distorting the light and warping the atmosphere. "That's it," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "That's the doorway." A low guttural sound filled the room. The Khazar had found them. "Stop them," shouted General Varrock, his booming voice echoing through the chamber as he stormed in with a squad of his elite soldiers. They raised their weapons, aiming them at Ethan and Lyra. "Whatever you've uncovered, it's ours now." Ethan's eyes locked onto the rift, then back at Varrock. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said, voice low. "This isn't a weapon. It's a disaster waiting to happen." Varrock didn't flinch. "I don't care what it is. The Khazar Empire will control the galaxy, and this," he gestured toward the rift, "is just another tool to ensure that." Lyra stepped forward, fear and defiance in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said urgently. "The rift is a doorway to nothing. It's the end of everything. Humanity sealed it away for a reason. We can't control it." Varrock's cold, calculating expression faltered for a brief moment, but his soldiers didn't hesitate. The air hummed with the sound of energy weapons charging. The rift pulsed with a deeper, more insistent energy, as if responding to their presence. The ground shook again, louder this time, and the machine's systems began to overload. "We don't have time to argue," Ethan shouted. "We need to stop this now." With a roar, Varrock gave the command, and his soldiers advanced, but before they could reach them, a violent shockwave erupted from the rift. The room shook violently, throwing everyone off their feet. The machines surrounding the rift sparked and fizzled, their systems destabilizing under the overwhelming force emanating from the void. Lyra scrambled to her feet, heart pounding. "It's reacting to us," she gasped. "The alignment is accelerating. It's almost open." Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the control panel. "We have to shut it down. Now." But before they could make it to the console, the rift unleashed a final, deafening blast of energy. The floor buckled beneath them, and the facility seemed to implode with a loud, terrifying roar. The room was swallowed by the void as the rift expanded, its tendrils reaching outward like the claws of a beast, drawing the light from the very stars themselves. The room trembled as the rift's energy surged, its immense power warping the air around them. Ethan's ears rang from the blast, and his vision swam as the ground shifted beneath his feet. Lyra had managed to grab hold of a nearby console, her hands shaking as she tried to stabilize the rapidly failing systems. Sparks flew from the walls, and the overhead lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows across the chamber. "Lyra!" Ethan shouted over the roar of the rift's expanding energy. "We need to shut it down now. It's already opening." "I can't," she yelled back, her voice full of desperation. "The system's overloaded. If we don't get control over the core, the entire facility will collapse, and the rift will open wide enough to consume the galaxy itself." General Varrock, his uniform singed from the shockwave, staggered to his feet, fury and disbelief written across his face. "You fools," he bellowed. "Do you really think the Khazar will bow to your mistakes? We will harness this power, no matter what." Lyra shot him a cold glance. "You don't understand. This power isn't something that can be harnessed. It's a doorway to the end of existence itself. Humanity sealed it away for a reason, because once it opens, there's no coming back." Varrock laughed bitterly, wiping the blood from his lip. "If humanity was so wise, why did they disappear? Hiding away, leaving us to clean up their mess. We will decide what happens now." The rift pulsed violently, sending out a shockwave that knocked Varrock's soldiers to the floor. They struggled to rise, disoriented, but even the elite Khazar soldiers seemed to be overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the energy filling the room. The rift's tendrils had now reached into the very fabric of space itself, and its pull was growing stronger. Even Ethan could feel it, the crushing pressure, as if the very air was being sucked into an endless void. "We need to make a choice." Lyra gasped, her voice strained. "The rift is calling the stars. It's feeding on the galaxy's energy, and when it's fully open, nothing will survive. I can't shut it down alone. But if we channel the power, I might be able to close it, but it will cost us everything. Every ounce of energy in this facility will be drained to seal it. The Khazar won't survive it." Ethan's eyes locked with hers, understanding the weight of her words. The galaxy was staring into the abyss, and there was no easy way out. "If we do nothing, Varrock will use it. And we'll lose everything," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We have to stop him." Lyra nodded, her face pale with the strain of the decision. "Then we make the choice. Together." Ethan turned to Varrock, his hand tightening around his weapon. "You don't have to die for this, Varrock. There's still time to stop it." Varrock snarled, raising his blaster toward them. "You're wasting time. The Khazar will take this power, and if you think you can stop it." Before he could finish, a sudden violent surge from the rift interrupted him. The room crackled with energy as the unstable machines groaned, their core systems giving way. The rift's gravitational pull intensified, and for the briefest moment, the fabric of reality seemed to twist. Ethan's vision blurred, and a terrible pressure gripped his chest as the entire facility seemed to collapse in on itself. In that instant, Lyra made her choice. With trembling hands, she slammed her palm against the control panel. The systems around them hummed, the energy flowing toward the rift, its light now blinding. The walls shook, and a deafening roar echoed through the facility. Ethan tried to reach for her, but the energy was too strong. "No!" Lyra cried out, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "It's too much." The final surge of power filled the room, and the rift exploded in a blinding flash. Ethan was thrown backward, the force of the explosion sending him tumbling across the floor. The sound of the rift's collapse filled his ears, the roar of endless space receding into silence. The room was still. The air, once crackling with energy, now felt strangely empty. Ethan pushed himself to his feet, disoriented. He scanned the chamber, his heart pounding. The rift was gone, and so was Lyra. A small, flickering light on the console indicated that the facility's core was beginning to stabilize, but it was too late. Lyra had sealed the rift, and with it herself. She had sacrificed everything to save the galaxy. Ethan fell to his knees, grief and awe overtaking him. The Khazar, still stunned from the chaos, watched in silence as the last of the energy dissipated. Varrock, his expression hard, took in the silence of the room, his desire for power extinguished in an instant. The galaxy had been saved, but at a cost no one would ever forget.